Hello, everybody. Hello, Miami. Hello, Soccerex. Thrilled to be here today. We're going to talk about FC Cincinnati's incredible training facility and FC Cincinnati's historic season here in MLS. Year 5, lifting the Supporters Shield. I'm Jillian Sakovits, host of the MLS Season Pass on Apple TV, and I have 3 gentlemen joining me today. We have Dan McNally, Vice President of Soccer Operations at FC Cincinnati, Bill Baker, Vice President and Managing Partner at MSA Sport, and Joe Schmidt, Associate Principal and Architect at MSA Sport. Thank you so much, you 3, for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So FC Cincinnati came into Major League Soccer in 2019 and has had 2 incredible seasons, playoff debut last year, and then this year lifting the Supporters Shield, so winners of the regular season. This question, Dan, we'll start with you. How would you summarize this leap that FC Cincinnati has made in the last couple of years?
Well, we're very fortunate. We came from very humble beginnings, basically. We started in the USL just almost 9 years ago now, but we always had the dream and ambition to be a Major League Soccer team. So we had 3 great years in the USL. We had a US Open Cup run that really got us into the national attention with our club, and then we were fortunate enough to become a Major League Soccer team. And we had the first few years in MLS were a little challenging, but this year we've really come together well. And like you've said, we've had a fantastic season so far, and we're still in the playoffs. So with a bit of luck, you never know in soccer, but we're having a great season.
So today we're going to talk about FC Cincinnati's season, and also we're going to talk about Mercy Health Training Center in Milford, Ohio, that MSA Design helped with before you were even an MLS team, which is quite the feat in itself. So let me ask you this. Why was the training grounds, one of the best in Major League Soccer, such an important thing for FC Cincinnati to get right before you were even a first-level team?
It's really important because our vision for the training center was it to be a true home for our players. So when we went to the top level in US soccer, in MLS, we wanted to make sure we provided the right environment for our players. So we thought the best thing we could do is to build a training center so all our first team players, all our coaches, but more than that, all our technical staff that support the team are all in one place. Because one thing we found in our years in MLS is that there's so many decisions that need to be made so quickly during the day. And we're fortunate to have not just our players, not just our coaches, but we have our operations team, our community team, our media team are all at the Mercy Health Training Center. So in terms of our professionalism, having this standalone building has been very, very good for us. And I think it's proved to be very wise because as our years in MLS have gone on, all of a sudden we're starting to see the success on the field that we kind of known we built off the field with our facilities.
I can attest when I was there for FC Cincinnati, of course, but also the U.S. men's national team had training camp there for a friendly last year when I was covering it for ESPN, and they were raving about it. So it really is one of the impressive facilities in Major League Soccer. Bill, spearheading this, what was behind the concept and the design process for the training center?
Well, it's interesting, Jillian. So when the club was being formed, we actually started the design before they knew they were in Major League Soccer. So the owners, ownership, and Dan and their team directed us to develop the world-class facility that would be best in the country, if not the Western Hemisphere. So we looked to the best clubs around the world, looked at the finest facilities, the highest end quality, and made sure that it translated into the implementation of the building.
Was there a certain facility when you looked across others in the U.S. or in Europe that stood out to you guys?
You know, it was interesting. We looked a lot in the English Premiership and then in the Dutch leagues and the German leagues. And so there wasn't one in particular, but it was looking at the top clubs in Europe that really drove some of the decisions as far as the benchmark we had to meet or exceed throughout all of the design and planning.
And we were fortunate as well. We had other clubs in MLS like Atlanta United invite us to their training centers, and they were very gracious to us as we were becoming an MLS club to let us actually look around their facilities. So we were able to kind of take some ideas from various facilities and kind of put them into our facility.
Joe, you have been involved in projects for Major League Baseball, for the National Hockey League. What was most unique about a soccer training grounds?
Sorry. Structurally, things are a little different, but it's really what's more unique is kind of the setup of the club itself or the organization. So some sports or teams that we work with, we really have a lot of access to coaches and players, and we can ask a lot of questions. One thing that was really interesting with FC Cincinnati's training facility was that the club was so new. A lot of those positions and a lot of the people we would go to and elicit feedback from hadn't been hired yet. And so we were able to become really close with Dan because Dan was the person kind of making all the shots. So Dan took, all his knowledge and experience in soccer and worked really closely with us to kind of develop the final product and what you see today.
This is for the group. How did you incorporate, or what was it about culture in Cincinnati, Ohio, that you were able to bring to this training facility?
Well, when we started the club, we wanted to be a family-friendly brand. So what we wanted our training center to be kind of, like we said, the home for the players. So we bring in players from all over the world. This is professional soccer. It's the world's game. So when a player comes to play for FC Cincinnati, we want to make sure they feel comfortable in their training environment. Because if you think of the stadium, we've built an unbelievable stadium, TQL Stadium. We're there probably 20 times a year. At the training center, we're probably here 300 days of the year. There's not many days off in professional soccer. But this is the players' environment. So a family-friendly environment, a professional environment, and also somewhere where the players feel safe to come every day to do we have a beautiful cafeteria, which we may talk about. They get their nutrition, their food, outstanding medical treatment here, and then, as we'll see, world-class soccer pitches so that they can train at their highest level. But family-friendly and a top-level professional environment.
Yeah, and I think we also work closely with the branding team, of the club as well as with our team to integrate the brand throughout the facility. So no matter where you are in the building or on the complex, you're FC Cincinnati and Major League Soccer.
I'd have to imagine, as a design firm that's based in Cincinnati, Ohio, a soccer project was quite new. What were some of the things that surprised the two of you?
You want to go first?
Well, especially with working through some other sports, right? You have football, you have hockey, baseball. Soccer players tend to be a little bit smaller than some football players, right? A soccer locker room and the locker itself does a very different thing than a football locker room, right? And so learning some of those intricacies was really interesting. Soccer players train very differently than football players or players from other sports. So it was fun to learn all of those different nuances between the different sports.
Yeah, and I think, Jillian, because the club just exploded into the city. We're Cincinnatians, we love our city and we love our community, but to see how the entire community of this old Midwestern city embraced the club, from our kids to our friends to our neighbors, and able to be a part of it and translate that into a building for our hometown club, it was unbelievable.
Dan, coming from outside of the United States, you know the facilities that perhaps are available in other countries. You're mentioning the English Premier League, the Bundesliga. What were some inspirations that you took when you wanted to make sure that FC Cincinnati had this level of a facility?
Well, the dream for us is when we started the club, we were a very ambitious club, and we have always had high ambitions, and we're a very optimistic group. When we put this facility together, in my mind, I wanted us to have, and this is very ambitious, is to sign any player in the world. And on his first day with FC Cincinnati, we're able to bring him through our training facility and feel proud of our facility. So now in MLS, we have the greatest player of all time, Messi. Now, he's not playing for FC Cincinnati, he's playing for Inter Miami. But if we were to sign somebody of that stature, when we walk them through our facility, I want them to feel this is high-level soccer, and I think we've been able to achieve that. But yeah, we took inspiration from Chelsea and Tottenham. And I'll tell you a little bit of a story. Our general manager and CEO went over to Tottenham, and they've got a beautiful swimming pool in their training facility. And he organized a meeting with Bill when he got back and said, guys, the training facility looks great, but we have to build a swimming pool. Well, that was a little bit out of our price range in that moment.
I missed the swimming pool when I was there.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the ambition. But we wanted to come into MLS with really high standards because players talk. So a player that plays for us has this experience when they play for the national teams. We've got players right now playing for Colombia, Venezuela this weekend. They're talking to each other, and hopefully they're talking about this beautiful training center. And we found when the U.S. national team comes, we have all the best players in the national team walking around our training facility, and literally you've got Christian Pulisic going, wow, FC Cincinnati. It's pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, we are. We're decent. You know what I mean? So I don't know. We're proud of it.
Yeah.
Does this inspire the two of you now? Have you had more inquiries about other soccer facilities in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a national sports practice who are in Cincinnati, and definitely we love working in soccer facilities and designing soccer facilities, whether it's the top tier professional soccer or collegiate or in the Division II league. So it's great to be a part of the soccer business, and we love being part of this community.
Bill, you mentioned that you had to come up with the design before Cincinnati was announced into MLS. How much more challenging did that make this project?
It made it more fun, frankly. I mean, we had Dan and some core people from the club, and we benchmarked other facilities, and a lot of it was how do we design the building to be expandable, knowing that it will change over time. And so the type of construction, you can see the picture here, and I know we'll have others we'll go through, but making sure the building was flexible inherently as we did the design, that was the key, to make sure there were corridors that connected to open spaces. There's a rooftop deck that we've already expanded into and built a whole second floor on, because we knew the program, the staffing, the direction of the club would change over time.
How does this facility serve also the academy kids and the second team?
Yeah, so right now we have so MLS Next Pro, our second team. We've just completed year 2 of MLS Next Pro. So we were really fortunate in that when we designed this facility, we built an academy wing, and MLS Next Pro didn't exist in that moment. So we were fortunate that when MLS Next Pro started, everybody comes to me, my role as head of operations is, well, where are the MLS Next Pro players going to go every day? Well, I said, well, we have an academy wing, let's put them in there. So that's kind of how that worked out well for us. But one of the things we're fortunate with MSA is when we design this facility is that there's room for expansion. So one thing we're already experiencing is we have 5 academy teams, a second team, and we also have our first team. That's 7 teams currently training at our facility. So as time goes on, we're going to look to expand this. But because of MSA's smart way of setting this up, is we have room for expansion, which I think is really important in US soccer because it's expanding, it's growing, so we're going to have to grow with it.
For those who follow FC Cincinnati and follow Major League Soccer, I'm sure they'd love to know, Dan, who's the guy that kind of uses the facility there the most? There's always one player that's in super early, eating all the meals, last to leave. Who's that for Cincinnati?
Well, one thing we did is that we have a fantastic cafeteria. So in my mind, it's kind of a simple way to look at it. You make a nice breakfast with good coffee, the players arrive on time. It's an important thing. But I'm sure people know Brandon Vasquez. Is a forward for us who's now a US men's national team player he's had a few brilliant seasons for us. One of the things, kind of a success story for us, he came from Atlanta United and was doing well. He came to us as a young player and he's really benefited, I think, from the training center, from sports performance, the nutrition side of things, and he's really blossomed with us. And now he was a good goal scorer last year, but now he's a national team player, and he's kind of propelled us into the playoffs. So Brandon's an easy one, but there's a number of different players I could mention, but for sure Brandon Vasquez.
Joe and Bill, for people here who maybe aren't architecturally savvy like myself, what should you know about building a sports facility, especially one like the one in Milford?
I think I'll start. I think ultimately when you plan and design a sports facility, and which is what we love about this, is you design it around the operations of the team. You start with the player. What's the experience of the player? Where do they arrive to the site? How do they enter the building? Can they grab a snack? Then they go into the lounge. Then they go into the locker room. So designing it around the flow of the practice and the use of the particular building is really, really key. And so I think, and also for this site, which also had technical staff, communication staff, some administration, designing the building so that it met their needs as well. And what we love about this is the fact that all of those folks come together, as Dan talked about, as a home. This is really the heart of the club on a day-to-day basis. Joe?
Yeah, and with this facility, we paid really special attention to public versus private. So we designed it in a way that has some really unique features so that the player can arrive at the site and spend their entire day kind of in one realm, and they never have to cross that other realm, where a visitor coming would kind of be the opposite. And we paid special attention to that also, knowing that the facility would have to be expanded in the future as the club grew. So it was just a really fun way to think about things, and fun way to organize space around those two different realms of public and private.
Dan, you mentioned wanting to have a place like this be what draws in a player when you're trying to recruit and you're trying to sign big names. What's been some of the feedback that you've gotten as FC Cincinnati this year has been a team that's gone out there and made big moves with high-ticket players?
Well, what I do is normally about 3 months into the season, I'll sit down with some of the new players. So every year in MLS, maybe we go through, depending on how well you did the previous year, maybe 7 or 8 to 10 new players come into the building, and they've been at other clubs in MLS, so they've been around the league, and I normally sit down with 2 or 3 of them to go through, hey, what are we doing well at the training center? What have your experiences been in other places, and what can we do better? Because I don't think we need to stand still, because one thing I would imagine with training centers is that other teams are going to try and outdo us. They're going to try and build training centers as good or if not better than this. But we're very proud to make sure we get that feedback from the players, because they see everything. They talk to each other. And one of the key components is for us is the sports performance room and the nutrition, the cafeteria. Those are 2 areas that absolutely impact a player. If you think that what they eat, what they put into their body is key, and we're able to serve about 160 meals a day in the training center, so we're basically running a restaurant. And then also in sports performance, the medical side of it is very important, because for everyone who's involved in MLS, the travel is unbelievable in Major League Soccer. The flights, the charters, the number of games. We may play 45, 50 games this season. So making sure the players are getting the right medical treatment, sports performance is key. So in my mind, if you take care of the nutrition, the sports performance side of things, and then marry that with beautiful fields, you've kind of got like the trinity of things that you need.
That's always something that stands out to me when speaking to players who come from abroad, is they can hear that there's a lot of travel, but until you make a flight from Vancouver to Atlanta or from Cincinnati to Los Angeles a couple times a year, then you see how different it is from England or from Germany or other leagues.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, Jillian, in that Dan talked about their feedback from the players, and many of our other professional and high-end clients, I don't see as many of them making those ready adaptions. So every year, Dan always calls us, hey, we need to make a tweak here, we need to edit the building, change something around, that it shows that they are so player focused.
To have a facility like this, and then obviously Cincinnati went from Nippert Stadium into their own stadium in TQL, how did you see the success, which has to be one of the quickest success stories in Major League Soccer, to go from 3 challenging seasons to 2 incredibly dominant seasons where FC Cincinnati is a favorite for MLS Cup this year? How did you see having the pride in a facility like this translate to what happened on the field with Cincinnati?
Well, it's just the overall environment that we've built. I'm a big believer in culture in the building itself. So one of the great things we have is, like I said at the start, we have our players obviously there, we have our technical staff based there, of course, but we also have all the support people. So if you think soccer operations, community people, communications staff, everybody's together, and I think that's one of the unique things. If you look at the photo behind me, that's where we started at Nippert Stadium. That's in the middle of a college campus, and it was wild in the first 3 years of our club, because we had a brilliant home environment in the middle of it.
It was fun at Nippert.
It was amazing. This is the reason I've got this haircut now, because of what happened at Nippert. But what happened was we trained there as well. So every day we were practicing. Our whole club was training in the middle of a college campus. So when the fans leave on a Saturday, they don't realize that on Monday we're back there training in the middle of a college campus. You can see there that square, that orange square. Underneath that little stand was our locker room, our offices, and everything. And it was kind of a wild situation. So although the club was growing very fast, we were getting 25, 30,000 people at every game. We'd come back on a Monday and our offices were tiny. So it was very important that we found the right space to move into.
Yeah, I think one stat, Dan and I were talking, and Joe, they had about 4,000 square feet here in the orange, and now they're about 40,000 square feet. So you think about how that has grown with the club, to have room to breathe and room for their athletes and staff. It's pretty incredible.
With Cincinnati, going from Nippert Stadium and then having your own stadium, the incredible training grounds, what was the biggest challenge now that you see going forward?
Going forward, I mean, to me, it's just growth. So one thing I think we did well in the seasons where we weren't doing too well in MLS on the field is where we're building the foundation. So our facilities were very strong. The training center, TQL Stadium, our fan support is unbelievable. We sell out TQL every single weekend with 25,000 people. So for us now, it's about maintaining what we have, but making sure we take the next steps. One thing I think is very important, and this is where these guys will come in to help us, I think a big growth area in US soccer is at the academies, and we now need to make sure that our training center we're expanding, so we're putting our young players into that same fantastic situation. I would say right now, maybe overall in Europe, they're doing a really great job of giving those facilities to the young players so they can have that growth. Now it's our challenge to make sure when we're bringing in a 12-year-old to FC Cincinnati, we're making sure that they have those standards and those high-level facilities that can match what's going on overseas.
Mm-hmm. How would that be challenging from a design standpoint for both of you?
Well, I think really it's, those of you in the soccer business know it's pitch space, locker space, meeting space. And so those are really, when we look at the function of the athlete, where are they practicing, where are they playing, how do we support that, and then how do we integrate it into the overall plan for the property?
Go ahead, Joe.
I would echo that.
I think now, as we look ahead, there's an international break before Cincinnati and 7 other teams engulf in the conference semifinals after Thanksgiving. How's the feeling around the team?
It's really good. I mean, we've experienced everything in our short lives in MLS, where for 3 years we won 3 wooden spoons. So we're very humble. I think sometimes in life, if you're humble, it's a good thing. So we've experienced when it's tough, and now we're experiencing success on the field. And we're in a good place. But as everyone knows, in the world of football, anything can happen in a game. So you've got to keep your feet on the ground. But the one advantage we have as the number 1 seed is we get to play our games at TQL Stadium. So our home advantage is very strong, where we have a fantastic fan base. We'll have 25,000 people at our next home game against Philly Union, and we're expecting maybe 3,000 or 4,000 fans to march through the city into the stadium. So it'll be a wild environment, but it's a game of soccer at the end of the day. We will see.
Dan, we debate this all the time on the wrap-up on the MLS season pass of, what changed the most for FC Cincinnati. Was it personnel, a new president in Chris Albright, a new manager in Pat Noonan? For you, how would you best sum up the last 2 years turnaround, and what do you attribute it to the most?
I think for sure.
Except the training. We'll keep the training grounds out of it, in addition to the training grounds.
I just put all our success down to MSA Architects. They've done unbelievable for us. But no, I think we learned a lot of lessons, and I think we had a very good start, right? In the USL, we came out very fast, and we were great right away. When we went to MLS, we had 200 days to go from the USL to MLS, and it was too short of a time period. So we learned a lot of hard lessons off the field in those 3 years, but valuable lessons. So now what we've been able to do, bringing in Chris Albright as our general manager, who's unbelievable in that he has all the connections in Major League Soccer as a former great player in MLS. He did a great job at the Philly Union. And so now he's been able to mold our team into a very well-balanced team. And then hiring Pat Noonan as our coach, again, a guy who's got a lot of experience in Major League Soccer, and he's been able to balance out this roster. And I put it to, we had everything in place for 3 years except the product on the field, really. But we've been able to bring in the general manager and head coach that have put us in position. And
one thing that always stood out to me in my visits to Cincinnati was before the product was excellent or even good enough on the field, the march to the match, the fans were always there. Nippert Stadium would be full. So that's really quite the unique setup that you have in a city like in Cincinnati. Before we conclude today, for each of you, if you can just kind of give us your final thoughts. Joe, we'll start with you.
Well, it was just a privilege to work on this project. I think this will be one of my career highlights. So being a personal FCC fan since their USL days, it was just a really great experience. And working with Dan and everyone else at FC Cincinnati has been really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that Cincinnati has this electric soccer club tells you that football has arrived in America. And that I often joke with Dan as we were working with the club early on, about 6 months in, I started seeing flags in neighborhoods because we live in the city. And my kids' friends were talking about it. And then all of a sudden it was this groundswell of support. So for me, it shows that the world's game is here in America and is nothing but a great trajectory ahead.
For me, I mean, I was the first employee of the club, so I've seen us grow from one man with his laptop to now we have all this going on. I'm kind of just, sometimes I can't believe it personally, but we were very fortunate in this project to work with brilliant architects in MSA who did a fantastic job for us. But yeah, we're in a good place right now. We got to stay humble, keep our feet on the ground, and yeah, let's hope we can win on the 25th.
You know, while we have all these people who I know want to know, about Cincinnati and could talk about them all day. We're good on those, Dan.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned being the first hire, which is incredible. The first hire. Can you tell the people just how that even happened to become hire number one for a club?
I was very lucky. I was the assistant coach at the University of Cincinnati for men's soccer, but I was coaching the son of our now CEO, Jeff Birding, in the club soccer community, and he said, "Do you want to go for a coffee?" And I said, "Sure." And I thought he was going to want me to be the kind of a director of a local club team. And he opened his laptop and he said, "I've got an idea. We're going to build a professional soccer club in Cincinnati, and he would like me to help build the soccer operation. And do you want to be part of it?" And thankfully, I said yes, because it's been a good career change for me. But I feel very fortunate. I was in the right place at the right time. And to see us go from where we were to where we are now, we're very blessed and very fortunate.
2015?
Yes.
Was the plan then to go to Major League Soccer?
Yeah, the plan, our ambitious plan was always to go into the USL and become undeniable, in that our club in the USL would be so good, we'd have so many fans and such great support that MLS could not turn us down. I don't know if MLS was looking at Cincinnati as a city, but I think they looked at our club and what we were building and the infrastructure, and they basically couldn't turn us down. So now here we are.
It's a soccer hotbed. You have to look at how many games the U.S. men's national team, the women's national team have wanted to play or go train. Greg Berhalter going to train in the state of Ohio. It is incredible. Ohio is certainly an underlooked at times soccer town. So this was fantastic. Thank you to the three of you, and thank you to everyone here for listening and for watching.
Thank you.